Welcome to the World Today on Channels Television. I am Amarachi Ubani. In the next 20 to 25 minutes or so, I'll take you through the major stories around the world, starting with Russia's President Vladimir Putin, who signed a multi-billion-dollar 30-year gas deal with China. A deal between Russia's Gazprom and China's National Petroleum Corporation, has been 10 years in the making. No official price has been given, but it is estimated to be worth over $400 billion. Russia has been keen to find an alternative energy market for its gas as it faces the possibility of European sanctions over the crisis in Ukraine. Gazprom shares rose 2% on the news. The agreement, signed at a summit in Shanghai, is expected to deliver some 38 billion cubic meters of natural gas. A year's work to China's rapidly rising economy, starting around 2018. Pakistan has launched its deadliest airstrikes in months, killing 60 militants in North Waziristan. This, analysts say, throws peace talks into doubt. The military said in a statement the dead included important commanders, although it did not specify who. North Waziristan is a stronghold of Taliban and Al-Qaeda-linked militants. It is one of 7 lawless tribal agencies, but the army has pushed the militants out of their bases in most of the other ones. The government has been pursuing peace talks with the Pakistani Taliban, but the country's powerful military remains hesitant about the move. We're in India now. As the country begins a new chapter in its political history, the BJP says Pakistan's leader Nawaz Sharif has been invited to the inauguration as Prime Minister. This is thought to be the first time a Pakistani leader has been invited to such an event. Other leaders from the South Asia Association for Regional Cooperation will also be on the guest list. But analysts say Mr. Sharif's inclusion is of special significance given the tense ties between India and Pakistan. Mr. Narendra Modi, who led his BJP party to a landslide win in the recent election, will be sworn into office on May the 26th. India and Pakistan have fought 3 wars since independence in 1947, and even more recently, bilateral ties have suffered in the wake of the 2008 Mumbai attacks, in which 166 people were killed by Pakistani gunmen. Relations have improved slightly, though, under outgoing Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, but there are still regular skirmishes on the disputed border in Kashmir. We're still in Asia. Thailand's army chief has held talks with key players in the political crisis a day after declaring martial law in the process-hit nation. General Prayuth Chan-o-cha met representatives of the government and the 2 main protest factions. Reports, however, say the talks ended without reaching a conclusion. More talks are to be held later on Thursday. Thailand has seen 6 months of unrest since protesters began a campaign in November last year to oust the government. At least 28 people have been killed, hundreds more injured in the demonstrations.
One day after martial law was announced and Thai troops have retreated from the center of the capital, they are monitoring main roads leading to and from Bangkok and television stations. Also, the army chief is meeting leaders of rival political groups and parties to find a solution to the political deadlock. We have invited many groups and many factions who play a major role in the country to send 5 representatives to discuss a way out. The groups include the caretaker Senate Speaker, the chairman of the Election Commission, the head of the PUP Thai Party, the head of the Democrat Party, the secretary of People's Democratic Reform Committees, the head of the Democrat Party, the secretary of People's Democratic Reform Committee, and the chairman for United Front for Democracy Against Dictatorship. The army insists declaring martial law is not a coup. It says it intervened to preserve law and order after months of pro-government and opposition protests have left nearly 30 people dead. For now, the streets are calm and protesters accept martial law, but doubts are growing that an early election will be held smoothly despite these troops on the streets. The caretaker government wants an election that it will probably win early in August. But these anti-government protesters are opposed and don't see it as a way out of the crisis. Meanwhile, in another part of town, the government's red shirt activists warn of trouble if the caretaker administration is ousted. A message to the military to tread carefully or risk igniting a civil war.
Well, let's get a better understanding now of the situation in Thailand. Our colleague at the Voice of America, Steve Herman, who is in Bangkok, sent in this report.
Military, the army chief specifically, is saying that this is not a coup. Martial law has been imposed. The government has acknowledged that, and the government leaders say that under the Constitution, the interim government is still functioning, and that there will be a meeting later in the week between the interim prime minister and the army chief. Now, also critical to this are the opposing sides that are on the streets. We have the red shirts that are the pro-government demonstrators just to the west of the capital. They say they're fine essentially with what has happened, although that if the interim government is brought down, they will not tolerate that. The anti-government demonstrations, which have been lasting for the past 6 months or so on the streets of Bangkok, their leaders also seem to be acquiescing to some degree to the military and say that they will abide by the orders not to conduct any marches. Now, what is a little bit more ominous, even though this is not being called a coup, is that a number of television and radio stations have been shut down, and we're getting increasingly strict decrees being issued by the army about what people can and cannot say. First, they said even on social media, anybody who's seen as inciting any unrest will face prosecution. And now one of the latest decrees says there should be no discussion of the situation in any format. For Channels TV, I'm Steve Herman, VOA News, Bangkok.
Thanks a lot, Steve Herman. Steve has been monitoring the situation in Thailand. He will be bringing us up to speed as events unfold. We'll take a break now on The World Today. When we come back, despite the security situation in Nigeria, the U.S. leads a trade mission with 20 American companies to the country. Please join us again.
Exposing, uncovering, reporting, hard-hitting interviews. Sunrise Daily, only on Channels Television.
Welcome back. Let's check in on what's happening here in Nigeria. The United States government has indicated plans to invest $7 billion in its Power Africa initiative. That's according to the Undersecretary of Commerce, Penny Pritzker, who is leading 20 American companies on an energy business development trade mission to West Africa, specifically Nigeria and Ghana. Ms. Pritzker also reveals that another $14 billion is being sourced from 35 private sector partners for the project, which is expected to improve electricity in Africa.
Studies have shown that Africa will need $300 billion in investments to achieve universal electricity by 2030. Already, the United States government has committed $7 billion towards Power Africa and has secured additional commitments totaling $14 billion from 35 private sector partners. Simply put, Power Africa is designed to catalyze new financing and investment in energy solutions that will help Nigeria and the 5 other countries that comprise Power Africa to provide reliable electricity to its citizens. Already, Power Africa has closed on transactions totaling nearly 3,000 megawatts, with an additional 5,000 megawatts in the planning stages. So here in Nigeria, the Power Africa initiative is providing technical assistance as our government privatizes, as your government privatizes its electricity industry, an effort that could add 2,000 megawatts over the next 5 years.
In other parts of Africa, former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak has been sentenced to 3 years in prison after a court found him guilty of embezzling public funds. His two sons, Allah and Gamal, were also convicted and given 4-year terms. The three were also fined $3 million in order to repay the $17.6 million they were accused of stealing. 86-year-old Mr. Mubarak is also on trial for abuse of power and conspiring in the killing of protesters during the 2011 uprising that forced him to resign. He was found guilty of the charge relating to the protesters in 2012, along with the former Interior Minister Habib al-Adli, and sentenced to life in prison. But in January 2013, the Court of Cassation upheld an appeal by the two men against their convictions on technical grounds and ordered a retrial. Well, over in the Central African Republic, a country still boiling as Seleka rebels say that they're reorganizing to exercise greater control on their members. Seleka coordinator Abdoulaye Hissène said the group had put in place a new chain of command to rein in its fighters in the north. Its leader, Michel Djotodia, was forced to resign as president after failing to curb the violence that broke out after Seleka seized power in March 2013. Mr. Djotodia was the first Muslim leader in the CAR, which has a major Christian population. In the meantime, the government has condemned the move by the Seleka group, saying the group had seized state property in the north. The conflict in the CAR has displaced about 25% of the country's 4.6 million population. Well, Bagassi